Okay, let's dive into this. Today, we're tackling a topic that literally impacts every single one of us, and that is disrespect. We're going to break down exactly how to stop giving those tiny stinging moments the power to completely dictate your self-worth. And to help us visualize all this, we'll be following our stickman guide throughout this explainer, drawn out in simple black and white. So let's get right into it.
You know the feeling, right? You're talking and someone just cuts you off mid-sentence, like you were never even there. Or you walk into a room and absolutely no one looks up. Or maybe someone makes a joke at your expense. Everyone laughs and you just stand there, completely silent. In that moment, a very familiar, sharp ache hits you. And here's the thing. The hardest part isn't actually what they did. It's what their action makes you believe about yourself. It ruins our days. It totally clouds our minds. And honestly, it's just exhausting.
To really understand how this mental trap works, I want to introduce you to our stickman guide. Meet Alex. Alex is a young employee just trying to navigate the everyday dangers of office life. Now, for weeks, Alex was absolutely convinced that his boss hated his guts. I mean, he was losing sleep, his stress levels were totally through the roof, and he was honestly on the verge of just quitting his job entirely.
Because Alex had been busy, he was collecting evidence and basically built an entire airtight case against himself. The evidence? Well, his boss barely spoke to him. She never said good morning, and she completely ignored his work. Alex would just sit at his desk, replaying every single interaction in his head, frantically searching for what he had done wrong to deserve this kind of cold treatment. He was absolutely miserable. But here's the wild part. Months later, Alex finally learned the truth. The reality? His boss was going through a completely brutal divorce. Her silence, her distance, her lack of a cheery morning greeting, literally none of it had anything to do with Alex. She was just surviving her own life. And that's a huge light bulb moment for us, because people are usually just dealing with their own noise, totally unaware of how it's splashing onto you.
That realization completely changes the game. So the crucial point is this: disrespect does not come from other people. It comes from your interpretation. I know, that sounds almost too simple, but most of us never actually sit with that idea. We give all our power away by adding massive, heavy meaning to incredibly small, often totally meaningless gestures.
Think about it like this. Someone rolls their eyes at you. Physically, scientifically speaking, that is just a facial expression. That is literally all it is. But in your mind, your brain immediately starts running a script. Oh, they think I'm stupid. They don't take me seriously. They never have. See what happened? You aren't just reacting to an eye roll anymore. Your brain filled in the gaps with the worst possible story, and suddenly you're reacting to every time you have ever felt dismissed in your entire life. One tiny gesture suddenly carries the weight of years.
Ooh, or how about this one? This is a painfully relatable modern nightmare. You're in a group chat. You send a perfectly normal message. The little indicators pop up, read by everyone. And then, crickets. 0 replies. The chat just moves on like you never even spoke. You check again 5 minutes later, still nothing. And boom, immediately this thought flashes in bold letters across your mind. Did I say something wrong? Do they not like me? The actual truth? People are just busy. They're distracted, they're moving fast, they're looking at a screen while walking the dog. It is almost never about you. But our brains are hardwired to treat silence as a social danger. So, to protect us, the brain fills that silence with a story, and it almost always picks the most damaging one. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it leads to a very dangerous habit, something called outsourcing worth. This is when your sense of value becomes entirely dependent on whether or not someone else hands it to you. When you walk into a room and you need people to acknowledge you just to feel okay, you have essentially handed them the remote control to your emotions. You're at the mercy of their bad days, their distractions, and their insecurities. You're collecting evidence against yourself using their behavior. And we're going to stop doing that today.
So, what do we actually do when we feel slighted? Because let's be real, people will be rude, they'll ignore you, they'll underestimate you. That's life. Instead of spiraling, we're going to use a 3-step response. Step 1 is absolutely the most important. Pause. Not for dramatic effect, but because your first reaction is always emotional. And emotional reactions usually just make things worse. Your true power lives in the pause. So when you feel that sting, you literally just stop. Everything changes in that quiet space. From there, we move to step 2. Step 2 is to ask yourself a real, honest question. Is this actually disrespect, or am I just uncomfortable? because they feel very similar in the moment, but they are incredibly different things. Discomfort is personal. It's an internal insecurity of yours being triggered. Disrespect, however, is purely about their external behavior. When you take a breath and mentally categorize the moment into one of those two buckets, you immediately feel less triggered. And finally, step 3, decide. You have to consciously decide how much this matters. Not every single comment needs to be corrected. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just let it go. And let's be super clear here. Looking at someone who made a rude comment, saying absolutely nothing, and moving on is not passivity. That silence is ultimate control. It tells them, I heard you, I'm not moved by you, and I am certainly not spending my energy on this.
Now look, I get it. Sometimes it genuinely is disrespect. Sometimes a coworker consistently talks over you, or someone repeatedly tries to take credit for your work. That shouldn't be ignored. But your approach must remain calm, clear, and totally focused on the boundary. You do not need anger to set a boundary. You really don't. You don't need to raise your voice to be taken seriously. In fact, the calmer you are, the heavier your words become.
For example, if someone keeps interrupting you, you don't need to shout. You just stop mid-sentence, look right at them, and calmly say, I wasn't done. Not aggressively, just clearly. And then you keep talking. Or, if they take credit for your idea, you say calmly, that came from our earlier conversation where I suggested this. You state your boundary plainly, just once, and you stand there calmly without needing them to validate it. Because, at the end of the day, we have to remember why people act out in the first place. Most people aren't even thinking about you. They are hyper-focused on themselves. They're dealing with their own fears, they're protecting their own fragile image, or they're just carrying around the baggage of a really terrible day. When you stop making their rude behavior about you, an incredible sense of freedom just washes over you. You stop being on edge all the time, scanning the room for rejection. But to reach that level of freedom, you need a rock-solid foundation. And that foundation is real self-respect. Now, this isn't about how you present yourself to the world or posturing. It is entirely about how you treat yourself privately when absolutely nobody is watching. It's the conversations you have with yourself in your head after you make a mistake. People who feel constantly disrespected by others usually already disrespect themselves internally. So the outside world just feels like painful confirmation of their own harsh internal script. So how do we fix that fragile identity? And this brilliantly illustrates the solution. You build real self-respect through small, daily choices. It's keeping the commitments you make to yourself, even the tiny ones. It's taking your own opinion seriously instead of instantly deferring to whatever someone else thinks. It's fiercely protecting your time and your energy because you know they actually matter. You have to grow this belief yourself, guys. Nobody's going to hand it to you.
When you do the hard work to build that internal foundation, the result is practically magical. Just look at our stickman Alex here, who's now standing tall. Someday soon, someone is going to say something dismissive to you, and instead of that familiar, panicky tightening in your chest, there will just be a quiet pause. You will notice what happened, and you will remain completely whole and unbothered. You won't shrink. You'll know, without a doubt, that your voice belongs in the room.
For so much of our lives, we exhaust ourselves running around asking this one question. We scan every face, we overanalyze every single text, we dissect every slight shift in tone of voice, desperately asking, do they respect me? It is an endless, totally unwinnable game, because at the end of the day, you cannot control them. So I want to leave you with this final thought. Stop waiting for other people to pour into your empty cup. The day you finally stop asking if they respect you and start asking, do I respect myself, is the exact day other people's opinions permanently lose their grip on your life. So I have to ask, how will you answer that question today?